Okay, so today I really want to talk about a movie from the 80s. Yes, I just really have those 80s vibes. But what 1980s movie should I talk about? Invasion USA. Well, I could talk about that, but no, I want to explore something even more 80s. Why yes, of course, by the power of Grayskull and Skeletor's butt cheeks, The Breakfast Club. Well, it doesn't get any more 80s than that. Yep, I'm off to check this one out, baby.
The Breakfast Club might just be John Hughes' ultimate masterpiece. This classic coming-of-age movie was released in 1985, and its premise is a relatively simple one. 5 students whom are completely different from one another must spend a confined Saturday detention with each other. But there is so much more to it than that, as the film explores the raw and sometimes confronting ordeals of being a teenager, and the turmoil and isolation that can come from it. Whereas these 5 strangers who initially didn't like one another slowly start to learn more and more about each other, where they start to appreciate each other more as they face the realism that adulthood is upon them, in this sometimes funny, sometimes tragic, heartfelt drama, which is considered to be one of the most iconic movies from the 1980s and a genre-defying experience. So get ready for detention, as we explore 10 things that you didn't know about The Breakfast Club, the movie that put John Hughes into the cinematic zeitgeist. So, let's check it out. Number 10, original title. John Hughes wrote his ultimate story about the growing pains and agonies of the high school teenager, The Breakfast Club, in all its rawness in the early 80s. The original title of the movie was in fact The Lunch Bunch. Yeah, it doesn't quite have the same ring to it as The Breakfast Club. I mean, can you imagine saying, hey, let's watch that 80s classic teen drama, The Lunch Bunch? However, the title was changed to The Breakfast Club when Hughes found out through the son of one of his friends that the school that he attended had created the term breakfast clubs, which was a nickname for early morning detention. So naturally, Hughes saw much more appeal in that name than he did, well, The Lunch Bunch. So from there, the movie became The Breakfast Club. Number 9, Universal were hesitant with The Breakfast Club. Despite at that time not having directed a movie, John Hughes had already written several hit films, such as Mr. Mum and National Lampoon's Vacation. He intended The Breakfast Club to be his directional debut. However, Universal Pictures weren't sold on the idea due to the confronting realism of the characters and how the movie explores teenage turmoil. The studio didn't feel that there was much commercial appeal in The Breakfast Club. They wanted more of an oddball, raunchy comedy, as teen movies were back then. So instead, in 1984, Hughes directed the teen comedy 16 Candles instead. However, the following year, Hughes finally wanted to bring his school detention masterpiece to life. But Universal was still hesitant with hiring Hughes as the movie's director due to his lack of experience. Hughes insisted to Universal that due to the movie's mere $1 million budget and its single location shoot, that he was more than up for the challenge for directing The Breakfast Club. And so, thankfully, Universal agreed, and the rest was 1980s movie history. Number 8, the trials and dilemmas of casting. Anthony Michael Hall and Molly Ringwald was cast in the movie while they were making 16 Candles with John Hughes 1 year prior. Playing the Brain character, Brian Johnson, Hall and Ringwald were the youngest cast members at just 16 at the time of filming, unlike the other cast who were in their 20s. And Hall went for a growth spurt during the movie's shoot. Co-star Jud Nelson was taller than Hall at the start of the movie's production, and by the end, Hall was actually taller than Jud. But if you watch the film, I don't think you notice it. Ringwald was originally cast as the Alison Reynolds character, the basket case of the group, but Ringwald really wanted to play the princess popular girl Claire Standish, and tried to convince Hughes to do a casting swap. Several actresses were auditioned for Claire, including Jodie Foster and Robin Wright, but Hughes eventually did cast Ringwald in the part of Claire, and Ali Sheedy was then cast as Allison. Ringwald wasn't the only actor to do a character switch. Emilio Estevez auditioned for the role of the rebellious criminal figure of the pack, John Bender, but Hughes ended up casting Estevez as the athlete jock Andrew Clark, on the grounds that he couldn't find another actor more suitable to play the part. Nicolas Cage was originally considered for Bender, and John Cusack was apparently really close to being cast, but the role went to Jud Nelson, who was 24 at the time, making him the eldest of the high school cast. Screen legend and recent random punch attack survivor Rick Moranis was originally cast as Carl the janitor, but he left due to creative differences, and the part was recast with John Kapelos. And of course, with the forming of its young cast, the Brat Pack was created, thanks to The Breakfast Club and St. Elmo's Fire. Number 7. Filming location. The Breakfast Club's filming took place in March 1984 and lasted till May, only consisting of 3 months. The movie shoot took place at an abandoned high school called Maine North High School, which is located in Illinois. The high school was closed down several years earlier in 1981, and this high school was also used for filming scenes for Ferris Bueller's Day Off as well. In fact, Hughes filmed Ferris Bueller's Day Off for Paramount Pictures simultaneously during the same time he was filming The Breakfast Club. So I kind of like the idea that one day Hughes was off to work on The Breakfast Club and the next day he was doing work on Ferris Bueller. I just find that idea to be fun. Most of The Breakfast Club takes place in a school library. However, the actual library at Maine North High School wasn't efficient for filming due to being too small. So the library that we see in Breakfast Club was a set that was built in the gymnasium of Maine North High School. And this wouldn't be the only John Hughes related movie that would build sets in gymnasiums of abandoned schools, as that would be the case for other movies like Home Alone. Number 6. Heat, exhaustion, and other interesting events. So the young cast of The Breakfast Club really had to go above and beyond to prepare themselves for their parts. So much so, John Hughes had the 20-something actors go undercover in real high schools pretending to be students, as a way of preparing them for the teenage high school mentality and environment. Jud Nelson in particular was really convincing, and even gained a clique of high school buddies who genuinely thought that he was a teenage student. However, despite getting their teenage roles down to a T, the cast had to battle another dilemma: heat exhaustion. During the iconic scene where each member tells their detention story, the lighting that was used above the actors was so powerful it emitted lots of heat back down on them. In fact, it was so hot, it was making the cast fall asleep. So yeah, it was knocking them out. In order to combat this, 2 assistant directors were hired specifically to stop the cast from falling asleep and keeping them awake. By the way, all the dialogue spoken in that scene where each student lays their soul bare and speaks of their detention stories was ad-libbed, and based on the actors' real-life high school experiences, which probably added to the raw emotion that we see on screen. In the conclusion of one of the character story arcs, we see the Allison character go through a makeover, where she looked less grunge and more like an every student. Ali Sheedy did not like her makeover scene, and felt that the character shouldn't have to change her look in order to find a resolution. And yeah, I do see where she's coming from. While filming the movie, supposedly, Anthony Michael Hall and Molly Ringwald dated in real life. Oh wow, so in real life it was the brain who ended up with the princess after all. And then there's that dance scene, which has all the lashings of 80s cheese that we all love. In the original script, it was just the Claire character who dances, and Ringwald was really nervous about dancing by herself, and managed to convince John Hughes to change the scene where all the characters are dancing instead. It's great seeing all the characters dancing. It kind of symbolizes them breaking down their barriers that they have shielded themselves with. I can't imagine the scene with just Claire dancing on her own, especially if it involved the other characters just sitting there looking at her while she dances. It would have been weird. Number 5. Jud Nelson unleashes his rebellious side. Jud Nelson seems to be something of a method actor and really threw himself into the role of Bender, where both on screen and off screen he was living the life of the rebellious, hard to deal with, misguided youth. which proved tiring for the rest of the cast and crew. Molly Ringwald in particular suffered the most, as he would often pick on her and use her as the target to be the butt of his jokes and general bad behaviour. In fact, even writer-director John Hughes got so frustrated with Nelson and his out-of-control antics, he even thought about firing him. But thankfully he didn't. I don't think Jud was doing this to be an asshat, but he genuinely wanted to get inside and become the character. Nelson, however, did have one person on his side, Paul Gleason, who played the antagonist disciplinary character, Assistant Principal Richard Vernon, who said that Jud is a good actor, he was just getting into character. But still, it is a shame that Molly Ringwald had to go through a pretty rotten time. And that wasn't the only conflict on set. Actor John Capellas, who played the janitor, grew frustrated when, while trying to film a serious scene, Emilio Estevez and Jud Nelson were off camera trying to distract him and make him laugh. Coupleson told the pair, "You wouldn't behave like that during the making of Apocalypse Now while Martin Sheen was having a heart attack," but little did he know that Martin Sheen is in fact Emilio Estevez's dad.
Ouch. That's just awkward.
Number 4. The longer cut. The original cut of The Breakfast Club clocks in at 150 minutes, before being cut down to 97 minutes for its theatrical release. Apparently, John Hughes was the only person who was in possession of the original 2-hour and 30-minute cut, and now the print is at the hands of his widow. There are some details floating around about what the deleted material included, one of which was a wacky dream sequence the Allison character has. Another deleted scene involved an entire character who was deleted from the film, that being a PE teacher played by Karen Lee Hopkins, who in the movie visits the school for swimming practice. The sequence also features the male students peeking at the teacher while being in a state of undress. It is said that the scene didn't go with the rest of the movie, and felt more like something out of Porky's or a National Lampoon's film. Also, The Breakfast Club's two female leads, Molly Ringwald and Ali Sheedy, did not like the scene and expressed their feelings about it to Hughes, which led him to cut it out. However, this is where things get weird, as there are also claims that the peeking at the undressed teacher scene actually doesn't exist and never happened, and that the scenes involving the PE teacher were cut over some conflict between Ringwald and Hopkins, but who knows. Some deleted scenes have resurfaced over the years, and were featured on a special Criterion Collection release of the movie.
So will we ever see the original 150-minute cut of the movie? Probably not, but who knows.
Number 3. Don't You Forget About Me. One of the most standout aspects of The Breakfast Club is the hit song Don't You Forget About Me by Simple Minds, as it's heard throughout the film. And the song has become just as iconic as The Breakfast Club itself. Heck, that same year in 1985, Simple Minds performed the song at Live Aid. Point is, it was a perfect marriage mixing The Breakfast Club with the memorable 80s tune. The song was written by English musician and frequent Billy Idol collaborator Keith Forsey, and he was inspired to write Don't You Forget About Me after visiting the set, witnessing the scene where Brian asks the other characters if they will still be friends after detention. The original choice to sing the song was Roxy Music frontman Brian Ferry, but that didn't work out. Billy Idol was the next choice to perform and record the song, but that also didn't work out. However, if you're interested to know what Idol's rendition of Don't You Forget About Me would have been like, he released his own version of the song in 2001. Simple Minds were then recommended to do the song, and at first they were hesitant as they didn't like recording songs that the band had not written, but they decided to do it anyway. Good choice, as the song would go on to reach number 1 in the US charts, making it a huge hit. Number 2, Poster. Another thing that stands out about The Breakfast Club is the movie's poster. Just a simple image of the main characters huddled together in their poses has gone on to become hugely iconic and recognisable, as well as being a poster that often gets homaged and satirised, with it being one of the most celebrated movie posters of the 80s, right up there with E.T. and Back to the Future. The photograph of the cast was taken by famous photographer Annie Leibovitz, whom has taken many portraits of celebrities over the years, including Leonardo DiCaprio and Winona Ryder, and she even took a famous photo of John Lennon the day that he died. According to Ali Sheedy, the Leibovitz shoot lasted 2 sessions, and many photos were taken of the cast in several poses. until the photo we see on the movie's poster was chosen, as it was felt the simple pose that we see the cast in perfectly reflects and captures their characters in the film. And yeah, it oddly does. Simple but effective. It just goes to show that you can have an amazing poster which doesn't have to rely on amazing artwork, but sometimes one simple photo will be enough. Number 1. The Box Office Club. The Breakfast Club was released in February 1985, and it was very successful given its budget of $1 million, bringing in over $51 million. It was a favourite amongst critics, who loved the movie for its cast and characters and general story, and its harsh reality of being a misunderstood teenager and the expectations, neglect, and anxieties that come with it were also appreciated. There may have been hesitation that The Breakfast Club may not have done well, as it wasn't an oddball teenage raunchy comedy like Porky's or Revenge of the Nerds, but it seems that when The Breakfast Club came out, it was the realism that everyone had been waiting for. Finally, it was here. A real serious movie that reflects the teenage condition. After the movie's success, John Hughes had toyed with the idea of doing a sequel, or at least some kind of follow-up story which would have seen the characters meet up again later in life, and supposedly even considered writing an online story which was to follow up on the characters, but it never happened. And to me, that's just as well, as the movie ends perfectly. There were plans for a remake in 2008, which would have been set in an airport, with a group of 20-somethings stuck in the same room together, and it would have been called Bumped. But thankfully, the writers' strike of that time put an end to that one. The Breakfast Club is perfect the way that it is. It shows us the character explorations of 5 individuals whom are completely different from each other, whom all come from different backgrounds, with them being confined in a single space where they are forced to learn about each other and explore their strengths and weaknesses, and eventually find common ground and respect, where they leave the confined space stronger, confident people, ready for adulthood. It's a perfect coming-of-age story, and to all those thinking about watching The Breakfast Club, but aren't too sure, does that answer your question? So, what is The Breakfast Club? Is it a coming-of-age story? A character study of archetypes? A drama? A comedy? An 80s classic? Well, it's all the above. But above all, it's a heartfelt, insightful experience. So I say check it out. Anyway, I'm Minty, and I'm off to YouTube detention. See ya.